Hi, everybody. I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the S.M.A.R.T Performance Podcast, where S stands for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive problem solving, R for rhythmic operations, T for building a thriving community, and of course, P for performance. As always, this will be action-packed, high-energy, 15 minutes. Today's topic is about surrounding yourself with the right people, and that's a big open question. And I know I certainly have not always associated with the right people. So when to surround yourself, when to make cuts. And we have a great guest today, Jerry, who has deep experiences of both some failures and some great successes. So I can't think of a better person to help us explore this topic a little deeper. So Jerry, thank you very much for joining me on the show today. And why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your journey?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I am 7 of ninth child. I was born into abject poverty. I have a 15-year-old education where I dropped out of high school. I got my first job as an 11-year-old. I paid taxes in a restaurant in 1980 as an 11-year-old. I've never not paid taxes since. I've been beaten, stabbed, shot within an inch of my life multiple times. I escaped the streets after living with hookers and heroin addicts as a 17-year-old. Started my first business at 28. That first one failed a year later. I started it back up 17 days later. I was a millionaire at 33. I'm the father to 3 fantastic kids. I've been married almost 30 years now, and I've just started my another business at 57 years old, which will be my 13th.
It sounds like a horrible, boring, stagnant life that you have lived. I'm not sure there's anything that we can have to explore here. So let's take us back to the beginning, because from failure, much is learned, of course, only if you're open to that, and usually as being young. So I can relate. I started working on the farm, earning my first dollars on milking cows, then went to the butcher shop, and then went to more the entrepreneurial route. So much in common. I've treated many people who have been shot and stabbed. Luckily, I've never had to endure that myself. But tell us a little bit about when you started forming your first company, or the first failures that you experienced. How did that relate to being surrounded by people, places, and things?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I started my first company, I got approached at 28 years old. I had been working for a transportation company for 4 or 5 years, and I had been running it for them and had been growing it. And so I had gained some sort of a notoriety in the Northwest running these businesses. And I got approached by an outside group that wanted to start a new competitive business, and they wanted me to run it. So they were going to be the money, and I was going to be the front-facing operation side of the business. And they gave me a pro forma. They sent it to me. I was sitting at my desk. I was 28 years old. I had a brand new, my first son at home, and I didn't know what I was looking at. I had a P&L and I had a pro forma, and I didn't know what I was looking at. And I had an epiphany sitting there, and the epiphany was, in my head, said, I don't know what I'm looking at. You have to shut up and listen. If you don't shut up and listen, you're going to be doing the same thing. The guys that are working for you are in their 50s and their 60s. And when you're 50 and 60 years old, you're going to be doing the same thing, because I knew everything about operations and where people were going and how to organize and how to lead and do all of those things. I didn't know what a P&L was. I didn't know the financing side of the business. And so that shut up and listen mantra, as I was starting my first business, took hold so much so, and I listened to it so intently, that I got rid of all of my friends. And so these are people that I grew up with, that I came off of the streets with. But the problem was, all we did other than work was talk sports, watch sports, play sports, drink while playing, watching, and talking sports. And it was, everybody felt like they were equals, and you would argue about the same things, and everybody could have an opinion, and there was no really diverse thought outside of, I like this team and I like that team. And so I went out and I ditched them all, because you can only go so far. The lowest person in your group, that's where you'll aspire to. It is impossible to pull those people up. You have to leave them behind. And so I went and found, very uncomfortably, architects was the first friend I made outside of that group, and then accountants and attorneys, and just people who were smarter than I was, who had more experience, I should say, is probably a better way of putting it, than I did. And I did exactly what that little voice in my head, when I had that epiphany at 28, told me to do, which is shut up and listen. And then my growth was exponential after that.
So the question is that the pivotal point is the most important, of course. But was that an epiphany that I woke up in the middle of the night and said, listen, I need to start listening and surrounding myself with new people? Or did somebody point it out to you that played that role? What happened in your journey?
No, I literally opened a document and I opened an envelope and in it was these financials and I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know how to read that. And I think it was a combination. I'll tell a really quick story. When I was 14 years old, I got robbed and they took all of the money that I had and they beat me within an inch of my life and rolled me under a bus stop. I was 14 years old. The year before, my next oldest sister, who was 7 years older than me, died on her 21st birthday. 4 months later, I went blind in my right eye from a virus and almost lost my left eye. Had surgeries. Everything's good. I can see out of my left eye. But they gave it to me pretty good, left me for dead underneath a bus stop. I wake up a couple hours later, a couple of bus transfers later. I'm walking the mile and a half home, and I stop on a piece of sidewalk in Portland, Oregon. It's still there. I go back to it all of the time because this time a voice outside of my head said, everything is your fault. I'm 14 years old. I got black eyes. I have a broken nose. I have 2 broken ribs. And it says everything is your fault. And I thought to myself, how can everything be my fault? That doesn't make any sense. But that stuck in my head. It literally said everything is your fault. And so as that came around at 28 years old, after going through all of those years later, it wasn't a hockey stick. I did not just change, on a dime and turn. It took time and experience, and I got into a lot of trouble, and a lot of things didn't go my way over the intervening 14 years. But my son was born. I had a half remodeled house at home. I had a wife who I refused to allow work, and all of those things came together when I opened that envelope and I was open to saying, hey, I don't know anything. I need to shut up and listen.
And that is the most powerful piece of that is to listen, right? Is to actually be open to that. I went through a similar issue early on when I was 18 years old with alcohol. And it wasn't until somebody finally said to me, he said, it's not how much you drink and how you appear, it's why you do it. I said, for crying out loud, sit down, shut up, learn to relate and stop comparing yourself to others.
Yes.
And I think that was my pivotal moment. Is that, listen, now that's my awakening and to get onto a path that is a little bit better. So you made that change. You finally, you saw that you were not the expert. How did you surround yourself in this role and then all the roles playing forward with the right people?
The one real quick, the one thing about listening that I will encourage everybody to do, when we say listen, we mean listen.
Yes.
So often, particularly when we're younger, and I was the worst at this, you're waiting for the other person to talk and you're being respectful so you don't jump in, but you're not listening. You're waiting to finish their sentence. You're waiting to tell them what you think they're saying, and you're not giving yourself time to absorb, right or wrong, what they're saying. Whether or not you agree or disagree, you're just in a big hurry. So being patient, particularly as a younger person, to listen to what people are saying is an absolute superpower in that context. I'm sorry, what was your question?
I think that let's dive into, because that's a really good point, and we'll go back to it. So it's hearing, right? It's receiving, processing, and then responding rather than reacting to something that's being said. That's the power move. And the thing is, it's very difficult, and the way people can catch themselves is that if you're already formulating a thought before the other person even done speaking, you're not really hearing the person, right? All you do is listening to noise. So
that's right.
So taking that knowledge, right, which I think, thank you for stopping me there, because it's really powerful for people to learn that and do that well, because that can be a career stopper if you don't learn how to hear and listen and respond to people. How did you end up surrounding yourself with the right people? What kind of vetting process did you put into play? And tell me about a success story and maybe also a failure, because I'm sure you thought you had the right person only to find out at a later point that they were not really providing you with a service that you had expected.
Yeah, I'll tell you the horror story first. Is when I started up the first company, I did what I was going to do. We ran to $3 million in the first year. The problem is the guys that were doing the financing didn't have the money for that kind of growth. That kind of growth is expensive. I learned a very valuable lesson, this little thing called cash flow that I didn't know anything about because I had never ran it before. And so these guys, or the outfit that I was with, came in and fired me on my 1-year anniversary. And so 17 days later, I went, talked to a bunch of my customers who I had just moved, and I got them to move again, and I got them to prepay me because I was so ignorant that I didn't know that you couldn't ask questions like, hey, prepay me so I can start my company. Well, the job I was doing for them was worth the investment on their part, and they prepaid me. The partner that I thought I needed, that came along on that journey with me. The second we started, we did 4 million, 8 million, 12 million, and 14 million in the first 4 years. And at the end of the 4th year, as we were really starting to make money, he went to the competition and tried to move the company out from underneath me without me knowing about it. And so he helped me a ton. He was 50 some years old to my 30 something young. I was about 30 years old. and he helped me along, and I really trusted him. But what I figured out was that I needed to know what everyone was doing. I didn't need to know everyone's job, but I needed to know what everybody was doing. He did teach me a lot, but I gave him too much leash, too much responsibility for the things that ultimately would fall back on me. So he was a mentor, but it crashed and burned. The flip side to it is, and this is what I want to encourage everybody to do. The business I just started is called the Kronos Group. It's a peer-to-peer group for entrepreneurs, people who are doing 7 and 8 figures a year. And what you do is you get together once a month for half the day, and everybody gets 30 minutes, and I'm chairman of the thing, and we go around and we work on real issues. Well, I got approached at 30 years old as my business was growing to go and join a group like this. Now, I said to the guy, he was in his 60s, he was a retired Fortune 500 CEO, and he was running this group, and I didn't even know what the group was. I didn't know what a mastermind group was or a peer-to-peer group was. And I said, I'm working 15, 18 hours. I can't do it. I don't have the time. He said, you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to. I said, well, I'm not making any money. I'm trying to grow my business here. Things are nuts. And he said, yeah, you can't afford not to. And it was some of the best advice I ever got, because I then went into the group where I was the youngest person by far. Everybody was in their 50s. I was in my 30s. I had a bigger business than they did, was growing exponentially, but I did not know 1/10 of what they did. And so sitting in that group, I took my advice. I shut up and listened. And for probably 2.5 years, I had very little to say, because I was listening to these guys who had been there before me, who had operated before I had, who had ran into the same things that I had ran into, and maybe had answers, or at least a way for me to move around the problem that I was going to get into. And so I learned right then the power of mentorship and of finding anybody that will help you. In my case, I had a running operation, and so I joined the group. If I had not had that group, I connected myself uncomfortably. It's very uncomfortable. You got to go sell yourself to other business owners. Go to your local coffee shop. Who owns it? Sit down. Ask them, can I have a conversation with you? I'm thinking about getting into the entrepreneurial space. Anyone who has risked, even if you think you go into this business every day and you think, I would never paint those walls that color. Right? And then we judge that person because the walls in this place that we're spending our money in are the wrong color. And if it were me, I would do it better. Counting that the person who painted that wall probably risked everything they have, every minute of their time. They're sacrificing and risking at a level unimaginable to us, and we're going to sit there and we're going to judge. Get rid of that kind of thinking and go to that owner and say, how'd you open this little place? How'd you open this big place? That's what I did. The number of conversations I've had with entrepreneurs just out of the blue has been in the thousands now over the last 25, 30 years. And and this goes back to our listening, I am legitimately interested in any way someone has found success or makes money. Conversely, I've been married for 30 years because I have a mentor that's been married for 50 years who's in their 70s, and we have had many a long conversation over the intervening 30 years as he's helped me through. So I cannot stress that enough. Anybody takes anything away from this podcast, find a mentor, and if you have an operating company, get in a group.
Love it. I mean, I love the passion, and it just comes down to, you have to be teachable, coachable, inquisitive, and you need to take a calculated risk. You have to go out there and put yourself, squarely in front of people. If you don't do that, you make it very difficult for yourself. As it comes down to people that you come across who have malintentions, it is one of the things that when I work with entrepreneurs, the thing that I find the most is they feel the need to do everything themselves because they don't trust anybody, or they never were taught how to properly delegate. So it is not delegating or asking somebody else to do things, but there also needs to be accountability back. And that's probably a lesson you've learned along the way, is you cannot do everything and you need to rely on other people to do things. How do you make sure that people are accountable so you don't have that person going behind your back and try to sell the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. And particularly in social media today, I want to flesh that question out just a little bit, because my perspective on this, in culture, in social media, which 85% of social media relative to business, I think is incorrect based on my dozen businesses and $450 million in revenue. And I've seen everything. I've made every mistake and I've done everything right. Most of what I see on the internet is incorrect. And this is one of those things that is incorrect. They use verbiage like, you need to work on your business, not in your business. And so having seen so much of this from the outside, to me, the way that they're saying that, they're telling entrepreneurs or people who are looking to get into the entrepreneurial space that they should not be working in their business. And that's 100% incorrect. You are correct that you need to know how everything in your business gets done. That doesn't mean that you know how to do it, but you need to make sure that it's getting done the way that you want it to do. I always say about managers is a good manager gets somebody to do for them what they want, but lets the other person think it's their idea. So however it is that that needs to manifest itself, even if it's not done the same way that you do it, you need to trust and verify, as Reagan said. You need to get in there and you need to make sure that they're doing it the right way. You need to train them the way that you want it done. You're not necessarily concerned that they do it the way that you would do it, because as entrepreneurs, you're 100% right. We all think that we're the only ones who can do it. You cannot scale a company if you are the only one doing the work. If everything stops at you, it's impossible to scale the company. But that does not mean that you don't know how to do all of the work gets done. And in a pinch, I've had people who have skills that I don't have, who can do things that I can't do. But if they disappeared, I know who I can call. So I've done the legwork, I've gotten in front of it, and if I get into trouble, I can call on somebody to come in who can say, will they do it as well as the person who was doing it for me? No, probably not, but they'll come up to speed pretty quick. But I have somebody in a place that I can't do that work. I better have a backup. Trust and verify.
Yeah, redundancy is key, right? So I use that what they call, people need to establish an operational rhythm. To be successful, you need to have the right people in the right roles, meaning you have the skills, knowledge, and abilities, the time, the bandwidth to do it well. And it's not about managing people out. It's about how can I set them up for success? How can I unify the approach, right? So people need to be on the same board and focus on the one or two things that matter most. The critical part is we need to measure, right, our performance. If you don't measure your performance, if you don't know how to look at a P&L, if you don't look at things on a day-to-day basis, it's very difficult to really have full control. It's the cadence of accountability, right, is having people come back and be accountable for the work they do, even if they fail along the way. And without action, everything else is empty. So tell us in the last couple of minutes, tell us the secret that you have found when it comes down to people management, people leadership and management of process, that you say, listen, this is part of my success remedy, my success recipe, so to speak.
That epiphany after that beating I took when I was 14 years old changed my life once it took hold at 28. And at 28, as I started growing my businesses, I've had 10,000 employees over the last 25 years. And at 28, it started to really be a realization for me that everything is my fault. If I take responsibility for everything in my life, and again, I come from abject poverty, so this means something, because when you're poor, you want to point at everybody else, right? It's everybody else's fault. And nobody around you wants you to get out, because if you get out, all of a sudden, all of their excuses for why they aren't successful evaporate. So you're fighting against that. So I did the opposite. I took all of the responsibility based on that beating I took at 14 years old and that epiphany I had. And to this day, I've had people lose me $100,000. And I will look at it and go, just a mistake, or they stole it, or whatever it was. And I look at it and go, okay, what did I do that put that person in that position to make that, to do that thing to me? And then how upstream of that do I fix that so I still get the same job done without the risk that I opened myself up to? If the person stole it, they're going to be prosecuted, whatever. If it was a mistake, they're going to be reprimanded, or whatever it is, or taught differently. But I don't ever, social media and television makes business look like you throw chairs around and you're building motorcycles and there's doors slamming and getting wrenches thrown at each other and everyone's hollering. Well, who in the hell would work for people like that? Nobody would. And so there's no value in that kind of emotion. There's no value in acting like you're on a sports team. That kind of behavior is relegated only to sports. Unfortunately, it's bled over into the mainstream where we think the way our sports heroes act on the court and the coaches yell and scream, that's the way the real world works, and it is not. And so taking responsibility for everything that happens to me, not getting pissed off about it. Somebody crashes into my car, I wasn't watching. I should have been aware of it. What can I learn from that to make sure that that doesn't happen again? That's been a mantra of mine, and it's absolutely been the critical piece to my success.
It's powerful, very, very powerful. And then the truth is, right, the self-accountability comes before all else. It is really understanding that. This is a disclaimer. We're not saying that every 14-year-old should go out in the street and get beat up and thrown into a bus and get that pivot. It is, but we need to raise awareness around these moments that people or things are telling us, and we need to learn to listen to that. Jerry, I could speak to you for hours. I mean, I love
Yeah.
your passion, I love your depth, I love your insights, and there's a reason why you're successful, of course. Where can people find you?
So Jerry Brazie, my name right there, Brazie. I am all over social media, but my latest company is the Kronos Group, Kronos Group.org, the kronosgroup.org. And here's my offer to everybody. Now, it's a peer-to-peer group. It's a brand new company I'm just putting together. But you can go there and you can schedule a half an hour with me. I'm not charging anything. Let's have a conversation. Maybe I can help you with whatever you're thinking about starting up. Maybe it's college, maybe it's business, maybe it's life, whatever it is. Any way that I can help. If you're an entrepreneur doing 7 and 8 figures, let's have a conversation. Maybe one of my groups is for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe we just make a connection. But I'm happy to talk to anybody, and anyone can go on there and schedule a half an hour with me, and let's have a conversation. The kronosgroup.org.
Excellent, very good. And what is your parting thought? Something that you want to imprint on the audience?
Yeah, we covered, you made a very good point there at the end, which is you don't need to go get beaten within an inch of your life to have an epiphany that changes the rest of your life. And inside of that example is a much broader perspective for everybody, which is go find people that have gone through experiences that can save you from having to go through the experiences. The smart man is the one that sidesteps the problem in front of him because somebody warns him that it is there. Going through it is fantastic, right? It's great learning. Everyone needs to learn, and I've lost at a massive scale. Everyone needs to lose. Everyone needs to fail. It's good for you. But if you can find people that can help you get around that through hearing their experiences, back to our listening, you are going to do yourself an invaluable service, and it is lost. It will give you an advantage in the business world today. It ought to give you an advantage in life today. You want to talk to me about how I've been married for 30 years and raised 3 fantastic kids? I'm happy to have that conversation with you too. There is strength in a population, in an environment today, in a civilization today that we've crafted, that the old people need to be put out to pasture, and that's 100% wrong, 180 degrees the wrong way. Appreciate your elders. They have much to teach. It was absolutely critical to my success as a young man that I was able to realize that and then go and take advantage of it. I want everyone else to do that too.
I think I will summarize in a couple of words. Go have 1,000 conversations.
Yes.
Jerry, thank you very much for being here today. Phenomenal. Look forward to hearing back from the audience what their feedback is, and they should definitely take advantage of the offer. To the audience, again, as promised, this was action-packed, and there's some key takeaways. Without taking meaningful action, you cannot or will not reach your dreams. So again, take something away from this. Take meaningful action. Go to the Apple Store, download the S.M.A.R.T Performance app, the Dutch Mentor, and make that your starting point to develop your success story. Right? We can lead people to water. We can make a drink. That's all on you. Thank you again. We'll talk real soon again. Jerry, great work, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.